We're going to go ahead and get started. Got a nice crowd. Thank you all for being here. I'm sure it was all to see Mr. Boone at work, but we appreciate it nonetheless. All right, but we're going to start off with item number one, which is the presentation on the conceptual preliminary update of the design for the Triangle Park, Go Mesa, by the Thompson Design Team.
We are going to try a new software today, so hopefully everything goes as planned. So this is meant to be a collaborative workshop, introduce y'all to how we arrived at the conceptual master plan for Triangle Park. I wanted to thank our design team, Thompson Engineering and Watershed, and Fulgham's Forestry that the city has hired as well as here. This did not come lightly. We have taken this very seriously and have spent a lot of time on this. I know you all have as well, and it goes many generations of acquiring this property and getting it to where it is today. So I want to thank all of you as well. The property has taken many years to acquire. There are deed restrictions on the property today, so we're thankful that we get to turn this into a nature park for our community. Fairhope has spent a lot of time and assets on active recreation, and this is intended to be a passive recreation park, and we want to make that an iconic park for our community. During COVID, we all kind of realized that return to nature and the value of that, and we certainly want to make this a place that is an oasis in the woods and we can escape to for physical and mental health. And then let this be an asset for the next generation as well. I want to, Anthony, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you spelled it out pretty well. It's, like you said, it's just an asset. It's going to be a jewel for the entryway coming into Fairhope.
Okay, hopefully you all won't get vertigo from me driving this thing, but I want to take y'all back. We did a lot of desktop analysis and research. This is actually an aerial image from 1938, and if you walk out there on the property today, you'll see a trail, which is the old remnants of Highway 98 that cut through the property. And then in the 60s, you can see they started to build the main highway. That's the right-of-way being cleared. And then you can see that they began to develop the road that we call today 98. In the 70s, we kind of got to current conditions of what we see there today. And then in late 90s, you start to see neighborhoods develop around the property. Here we are today as it sits, our current aerial, and we'll obviously take a deep dive into this. I want to mention we are focused on the northern parcel. We've got about 72 acres on the northern parcel. The south side is about 48 acres for a total of 120 acres. I doubt many of y'all have spent as much time as our design team has, so I wanted to walk y'all through the site and really get y'all an experience of what it is today. So this is the main entrance at the former Dias House. As you drive up into the site with the gated access. And this is the first thing you see as you enter the house, which the city now owns. The front, side, the parking area. This is the rear deck overlooking Fly Creek. This is the front door. As you can see, it's a forest, and it's a house in the forest. And this is that main drive that I mentioned to y'all. This is a secondary entrance, which was old 98 before the new 98. And so there are existing trails there, and they're good remnants, and we were able to walk the property. I'll show you some examples of where we walked and a lot of the other program elements we were able to see. There are some damages, obviously the old trees from Hurricane Sally that have fallen. But I want y'all to see a scale of some of the trees on this site, not to mention the beautiful views of Fly Creek. that are accessible from the site. But as you walk, it gets very dense, and you can see you're kind of fighting your way through the forest. We wanted to make sure that we took a look at adjacent views. So this is an area on the property where you can see, somebody's backyard on Fly Creek. So that got incorporated into our design decisions that we made. For instance, this is an area with a big vegetative buffer, so it feels like you're not surrounded, by adjacent neighbors. Looking at different plant material and trees on site, and then we even found some remnants of an old squatter that may have lived there over the last couple years. Some of y'all know about this project, but you can see the repairs that were made on the culvert at Highway 98, which will have additional repairs done and eventually, hopefully, some stream restoration. There are some moments on the site with some vegetative open space where you start to see the sunlight peeking through the trees. And then again, here you can see kind of the density of the forest. There's an old logging road that they use to access to manage timber on the site. And so that also served as another trail location that we're going to look at. As y'all know, there was arson on this site, I guess, last year. And so that we approximated about a 3-acre area that's been burned. We did a lot of boots on the ground research. You can see us kind of mapping and going through, and there's an old borrow pit on site, and this kind of gives you an idea of what the scale of that looks like. This is Rebecca Bryant out there, and then these are the walls of the borrow pit. So it's probably a 20-foot.
In that location, yeah.
Yeah, 20-foot drop. All right, trying not to get y'all too out of it. So early on, we had a steering committee meeting, and I wanted to run through the program and what we know. So we know we've got a 72-acre parcel. The city received a $1 million Go Mesa grant. So that's what really kick-started this project, and that's what we're working towards. Hopefully we can gain some traction and momentum and increase that number. Heavily forested, wildlife habitat first. We are humans coming into an environment that we want to make sure stays beneficial for everything else that lives in there. The program that is a minimum that we have to meet as it relates to the grant requirements is at least a 1.5 mile trail along with a 1/2 mile ADA trail. And I'll show you in our plan where we've satisfied that. Trailhead, restroom, a bicycle repair station, an outdoor classroom pavilion, and we've had a couple locations where we're able to put some moments where there could be an outdoor classroom. Educational kiosk and signage, parking area, landscape improvements, and a big part of this project is going to be a pedestrian access tunnel that will go under Veterans Drive that'll get you from the large parcel to the other smaller parcels. So we really want to look at those as maybe a passive recreation side and an active recreation, which is where the current mountain bike trails are. As part of the steering committee meeting, we identified a bunch of goals and objectives, and we'll go through some of those as we move further in the plan. In our preliminary analysis, we did a drone survey, and these are just some images of our drone, but I want to show you kind of what came out of that and has been used as our basis of design. So these are some of our preliminary sketches that came out of our design workshop and our survey. So we were able to get aerial topography from our drone. And so you can see that we've been able to use this, and you can see the remnants of the old road, the logging road here, the borrow pit, and there's a dry swale that runs through towards the house. We also asked them to pick up some strategic trees in locations that we knew we might impact, so we could work around those. I'll get into more detail on these design considerations as we move forward, but just wanted to show y'all some of the progress that got us to where we are today. Let's see. Should I go back here? I'm going to move, I'm going to move into the existing conditions, if it'll zoom.
Just think about it.
All right, can y'all see that? So just a general overview, here's our Dias house down here towards the creek. Here's the old 98 road and then the logging road here. We looked at our contours and our slopes, looking for buildable areas that we could place strategic elements. We know we have about 100 feet of fall on this site, so it doesn't seem from the outside that there's that much elevation, but it drops from 103 to 3 at the creek. So it's very nice, you know, once you get into the woods like that. You get a lot of terrain. This is the location of that borrow pit that I showed y'all the picture of. And there's a dry swale that runs down towards the creek as well. We also know that the city is planning a roundabout here at the corner, the intersection of Main Street and Veterans. And so we want to incorporate what happens there at the roundabout within our design as well. Other things we looked at, this is our site analysis and inventory diagram. As I mentioned, we know it was important from our steering committee as well as the city to maintain this landscape buffer along the edge. So that as you come into Fairhope from Veterans Drive, you still see that scenic greenway. And so we've taken that into consideration into our design. Other things we've also looked at were what are our steep and flat areas along the creek that we could either utilize in terms of viewing platforms or maybe an outdoor classroom or two. As I mentioned, we looked at desirable and undesirable views, so we've mapped those out. We also looked at habitat and species type to include invasive species. We've got to see what's the best approach in managing that. Let's see, what am I missing, Anthony?
I think you pretty much nailed it, but the key point here is identifying those existing open spaces, the existing roads that used to be there, the flat areas, natural spaces within the context of the forest right now for those classrooms, the trails, and any moments of pause throughout the spaces.
Moving further into our design considerations, I'll let Anthony explain these.
So this really talks about what I really quickly went through on the
Right click.
right click to move it. All right. Sorry.
Wheels.
There you go. All right. So along the creek's edge, Christopher mentioned finding flat areas and easily or more easily accessible spaces that would allow something like a perch. And a perch is really just, it levels out and allows small groups, large groups to gather along an edge to observe something. And you'll see that as a common theme throughout all of these experiences is just moments of pause, flat areas, natural areas that are already there that we identified, such as this bridge that we want to bridge over experiences, such as that dry swell that runs down to the creek right in the middle of a heavily forested area. The longleaf edge, so you can see at the edge of a restored versus a natural or a current condition of the forest. The ring that you see out of benches is just a moment in the woods, in the forest that you can pause, gather, educate, have some type of small presentation with the leaders. This gully, this is an image of one of the gullies here when the school children used to play and be educated on the cliffs and in the gullies, and we identified that borrow pit as something that could speak back to that history of Fairhope and the education. A hummock, it's kind of a loose interpretation. Typically a hummock is a natural landform. It's kind of a small hill within a landscape, so we see it as introducing some type of man-made structure that does the same thing. It raises you up, gives you a moment of pause, you're above maybe a trail or an overlook. Same thing with the bird blind. It allows you to be in the woods and be screened from nature, but still be able to observe without bothering the nature that you're observing. And the same thing with this overlook here. It's a natural space along the creek that you can look out over the creek or to the forest beyond. And then it's down to the left. And what really helped us identify some of these locations was this noise chart that we put together. As you walk through, there are natural boundaries that the noise of the surrounding neighborhood, the highways, really just turn off. And it's really noticeable in this light-colored patch here in the northern portion of the site. As you get closer to the creek, you really become aware of the lack of man-made noise in that portion of the park. And obviously, as closer you get to 98, it gets a lot louder, and all these intersections, obviously you hear road noise, and you start to hear some of the neighborhood noise as well. When we're looking at the structures, it's really about form, and it's kind of talking to our inspiration. We were looking at tents, huts, camp gatherings, those types of things to inform the shape. It's not so much that we want to put a giant roof out there. It's more talking about, do we want to go through a space? Do we want to be able to see out of a space, as shown here in this bottom right? Do we need a smaller form for smaller gathering spaces? Or do we want it to kind of disappear, do more verticality and speak to the longleaf? And materiality, we really want it to be robust. We want it to be resilient, and because there will be controlled areas using fire, we want it to be non-combustible. We don't want to have to worry about protecting these actively. We want them to be passively protected from any type of fire. Same thing for benches and seating throughout the spaces. You can go more natural with wood, or you can go a little more resilient with concrete or stone or steel, just to help bring some of the color of the stone, the color of the steel and the concrete speaking to board forming using wood, or the steel and the verticality and the color speaking back to the bark. And then we were going all the way back, right?
Yeah.
I'll let you get back to there. You know where it is.
So one of the things we did, as I mentioned, we walked a lot of the site. And so I included here some of my trail maps just to give you an idea of scale. So as you can see, our northern triangle piece, this was a little 1.5 mile loop, and we barely touched the site. 1.16 miles on the southern portion of the northern piece. And then we've gotten all the way up, 2.14 miles a loop just in our northern piece. I thought that was important to see, the number of trails and percentage of miles that we could walk. One of the unique things we did, we thought it would be very important for us to do a workshop on site. So fortunately, the city helped us out and got us in the house and everything set up for us. And we actually had a full day workshop where we did a lot of planning early on that morning, and then we did site visits, and then we came back and started, really putting pen to paper and sketching things out. We wanted to be invested in the site and be able to, sketch something and go truth it while we were there.
Yeah, that was the benefit of being there, is we could really go test that. We thought one way, walking through one time, and then we went out and tested that theory.
So we looked at those inventory analysis things, came up with design ideas, addressed opportunities and constraints, and began to start talking about those details. These are precedent images down here that I'll go through after we review the conceptual master plan. Sorry about the lag time. All right, so here's our conceptual master plan, and I think, what you can see is trails nestled in the woods, and we'll get into detail of some of those. We've got an internal area that we're dedicating right now to be a longleaf forest so that you can see the difference in habitat. This is about a 7-acre area in the center of the site, which we've spoken with our foresters on our team, and they think that's a manageable site, looking at long-term O&M for the city. I think it's probably best if we start close by the house. Everybody kind of knows where that is. This is the current access point that gets you to the house. And what we're proposing is making that restricted access and going back to what used to be old Highway 98 so we can pay homage to that trail that used to be there. So you'll have a main entrance and exit there, and it'll be two-way traffic in and out. It narrows to a one-lane loop with angled parking. We want this to be low-impact development, having gravel parking. So if there is a tree in one of these locations, we can work around that tree and save that habitat. It's been discussed in the future to have access to the creek. So we're proposing a loop road down to the creek, which will have a turnaround for dropping off a kayak on a trailer or a kayak canoe launch. Here's some images, to kind of support that. Also, as part of our program requirements, we want to provide bicycle repair station. So we propose that in this location on the back side of the house. The parking lot, as mentioned, we want it to feel like it's nestled in the woods. We don't want to go out there and pave this big giant parking lot. This is an image of something, and we'll show you some additional images. So you'll park and you'll get off to a trailhead at this location, which will really be kind of the start of your experience in the woods. As I mentioned, we wanted to pay homage to the old road that used to be there, so we're proposing that the trail continues on and it becomes a carriage road, and it pays homage to old Highway 98 that used to run through the site. At this point, we've heard from the bicycling community and others that it's beneficial that you separate bicycle and pedestrian uses. We really want this northern piece to be a hiking trail and nature trails in the woods. So we're going to have signage that the bicyclists will have a dedicated trail that will bring them to a tunnel location that could get them to the other site. As you continue along the carriage road, you'll see a difference in the trails. This dotted line is a dedicated ADA loop, and there's a half-mile loop that will allow you to see these moments that we'll discuss. So it's providing access for all throughout the site. There'll be a turnaround at a restroom pavilion where we are proposing these different landscape types. So there may be a butterfly meadow, resting area at the restroom pavilion. And having this carriage road trail still allows access to the restroom for maintenance from the house. So that really works out. The pedestrian trails will also lead to the tunnel, crossing over to the other side. And then here's what that bicycle trail may look like. We want it to feel buffered and narrow and really provide access to them as well. Let me go back up to the trailhead location. Right now we have a kiosk on the side over here for the Eastern Shore Trail. We were trying to show something that may be similar to that. That could change. We've got some precedent images of things like that we want to show. But, providing a water filling station, kind of those key elements that you would want at a trailhead. As you move through the site, this would be a typical trail. And the reason I show this image is because we want you to see that this is not just a straight shot. We want to preserve the existing vegetation. And so if it means we've got to go around a tree, you know, we're not clearing these lanes and impacting habitat.
And because this is a relatively small park, the density of the understory is going to help make you feel like you're out there by yourself by just the person in front of you being just a couple of turns into the trail. They'll disappear. It's so thick out there.
This is a image of a longleaf forest. As you can see, we have a trail cutting through, so you're going to see the difference between the habitat of the longleaf forest to the existing hardwood forest, and you'll be able to walk around that and through that. We're also proposing at that location, which is actually the old logging road, so you have easy access from the carriage road to the longleaf habitat, is having the outdoor pavilion for a classroom and potential benches and seating area at that location. You can see the network of trails that kind of get you through. One thing we noticed when we were on site, which is where we have this bird blind, and this is just an image of one, but kind of nestled in the woods here in this area. This is kind of where it opens up, and the design team, as we were on site on multiple occasions, saw 2 sets of owls. It was weird. You're just walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden, it's like an area full of birds. So we thought that was a really neat location for our bird blind.
And what's interesting is if you overlay the noise map with this location, it's right on the edge of where it gets quiet. It's like at that threshold to where you can't hear the highway anymore, and it gets really quiet, and you're in a natural setting.
Going back to, let's see, getting to the creek. This is the area kind of at the top of the bluff where you're looking down at it's not the headwaters, but at the headwaters of what you can see of Fly Creek where the repairs have been made on 98. So we propose a small overlook at that location. Just because you're up high and it feels like a moment, it would be a good resting spot. But here at this location is a larger overlook, and you get here and there's some beautiful specimen trees. And if you remember back on our site analysis, this was our desirable views location that we identified. So you're up here and you're high and you've got an overlook and you're just seeing down into the forest below and the creek below you. So we've identified this as a good location to have another one of those moments. If y'all remember, we had some flat areas there in our analysis, and much of the creek, you're kind of up high on the edge, but down here you can kind of get low and get to the water and access. So we're proposing a series of outdoor classrooms, which if you can see is close to the house. So if, you know, a group of students was able to come out here and be able to go take a short walk to have a picnic or do some STEAM activities along the creek's edge, and really trying to provide access to all in a bunch of different ways for the creek. Anthony, anything else?
I think we missed, there's a trailhead
Oh, yes.
down to the south, so you don't have to go all the way north to enter the site. There will be a trailhead off the existing Eastern Shore Trail.
Yeah, so this is the Eastern Shore Trail, and actually you're climbing a hill to kind of get up Main Street, but we wanted to provide pedestrian access from the Eastern Shore Trail into the site from that location as well. Any questions before we go to some of the images?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jack.
Several. I'll start with that last comment about the trailhead off the Eastern Shore sidewalk there on the south end, right there. Just a slight concern, I think that we'll have a lot of people trying to park on the sidewalk right there to use the trailhead. All the landscapers use that as their private parking. The sidewalks buses, it's a pet peeve of mine. I walked it today, sidewalks busted up. You can't get past the cars. So just something to think about.
Definitely.
There's nowhere for people to park there, and they will park on the sidewalk. And we seem to be reluctant to write tickets for that, but it's a real pet peeve of mine. That's the first concern. Go up to the trail that runs along Fly Creek, and the perches and the flat areas. I just worry about overuse of that trail and people climbing up and down the creek bank and what that's going to do to, the natural setting of that creek itself. I mean, nobody really walks that now, and if thousands of people walk it, it's right on those banks. And I know if you get kids climbing up and down those banks, as you do, the clay, the soil falls in the creek and creates sediment. So I have concerns about that being right. It kind of defeats the purpose of being on the creek if you can't see it, but I have a concern with it being right on top of it. And then the classrooms that are down there almost seemingly in the creek, I have some concern over just how that would affect, I have some concerns over how that affects the natural flow of the creek, not to mention that backs up to residences right there, and people are going to go from the relative calm of living on the creek to classroom activities on the creek. They may not take too kindly to that.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Just another, and I live about 300, 400 yards from there, so, I know about that, and I'm going to hear about that too.
Yeah.
I don't live on the creek personally, so
Yeah.
I'll set that out there, but I live near enough to that I know a lot of people's concerns.
Appreciate it.
I had some more questions. The bike repair station, is that kind of tied to the grant that you said? You
Yes,
need to
sir.
include that element?
It is.
Okay, good. All right, I thought that might be the case. And the bikes will be forbidden to get on the walking trails, or will be signage for that? To keep
That's
them
correct.
off of there, so the two of them don't mix. Were you guys considering our budget on this as you were drawing this up? Or
We
did
are.
just put everything in there that we could with no regard to money, or how did we do that?
Yeah, so we need to understand that this phase is the conceptual master plan, and we have to have a vision moving forward. We know that we have those minimum requirements that we have to meet as it related to the Go Mesa grant for $1 million. We certainly don't want to limit what our vision and goals for this property is by just what's included in that grant. So this document hopefully gives us that path moving forward, so that, Anthony and I and the design team will go back and say, okay, $1 million will get you this, and we meet these requirements. But we still got to have that vision and goals, moving forward for the future uses. And Jack, one other thing we're hopeful for is that this plan and this momentum that we're going to receive from, the design of this and moving forward is going to hopefully lead to more funding opportunities. We understand there may be some partners, out there that we can do some joint efforts with, but, we don't want to limit what our overall design considerations are, that are appropriate to the site.
I'll just say, I'll comment two more things. Lastly, I like the elements of it. I do like the plan. It's going to take a little getting used to the parking being down by the home, but I think prior to that being donated to the city, I think we were always envisioning the parking being up in the triangle area and keeping the area near the creek a little bit more hands-off, but it makes sense, I guess, to put it there. I've got to swallow that pill, but other than that, it looks real good.
Thanks, Jack.
Other than those concerns I put forth.
Anybody else got any questions at this point?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, we were talking about resiliency on this project, and I know you guys have seen the Gulf Shores State Park. It's a living space. Nothing gets wasted. The water's recycled, all those things. Is that something that, Jack's talking about money, but I don't know what that looks like, in these projects, how that works for our benefit when we're doing things to help the environment with the grants that you're speaking of. But we're putting a lot of structure, especially these, and the pavilions and things like that. Is there any way that we can keep those living in respects to our designs? Or is that out of the question to think in that form or fashion?
Well, the structures that are going to be out there, they're mostly going to be daylit, naturally ventilated. So as far as you running utilities out to these locations, it's going to be pretty limited.
Okay.
So the idea is that they're only used during the daytime, they're naturally lit, there's no need for the living building challenge aspect of it, other than sourcing materials that are appropriate. And,
That's-
you know, and that level of thinking, absolutely, that
that's
will
what-
definitely be in the design.
Right, okay. Very good. So I like that part about it, that and making it resilient. You know, we have a lot of storms. We don't want to have to keep trucking out there every time we have a storm, because we got a bunch of pavilions and bathrooms that have been decapitated, you know. So I'm hoping that we're thinking in that form like Gulf Shores did. One of the other things I saw that there was an amphitheater. We was talking about noise and things of that nature. And I know there's some residents backed up to these places here. That's something that I saw that, I know that's just a bigger vision, but you know, noise is a big deal. And if you have an amphitheater, we would have an amphitheater, we probably would be having some type of entertainment at those particular places. So have we thought that out? And if we haven't, that's something that I would want us to continue to talk about and think about, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the amphitheater. Thanks,
Yeah,
Corey.
you're welcome.
This is not going to be a performance stage. This
Okay.
is another one of those small outdoor classrooms.
Okay.
And the concept of it being an amphitheater is that it is in a bowl.
Okay.
And there is, you know, that feeling of an amphitheater.
Gotcha.
We don't want this being an entertainment venue
Red
for the
Rock.
city. That's
We're
right.
not trying to
No-
be like Red Rock.
No concerts out
All
at
right.
Na-
I just
na-
wanted to make
at
sure
the
we
park.
had a Red Rock
No
experience.
Red Rock.
You know, AC/DC was coming. or something
No,
like
this
that.
is
You know,
another
I
one of
just-
those small outdoor classrooms.
Just want to clarify,
Thanks,
my
Corey.
friend.
Good
Yeah,
job.
no worries, no worries.
It's another one of those locations, just like on the noise map, that you drop down in that bowl and it instantly quietens up. You don't hear anything around you, you're in that bowl. It's kind of-
Unless you're pushing out noise. That's what I was concerned about.
pushing out
That's
anymore.
right. Okay, very good. So, a couple more things. I saw that there was a couple, you know, when we had our steering committee, and you spoke on it, Chris, we were talking about separating the bikers from the pedestrian walkers. I see a couple of places where they actually cross, and I think we talked about this. What does that look like? I mean, for, you know, even with the ADA, I see crossings, you know, somebody that's blind and, you know, or somebody that can't hear, or like, what does that look like? Just to put it out there, I want to kind of see, are we thinking, you know, we don't want any crashes. Is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I understand, Corey. So we'd like the bikes to be limited to only this trail. So and that trail is dedicated to only bikes.
Got it.
So that limits that conflict. You know, managing the folks outside of signage that decide to take off, you know, we can't
I
manage
got
those
you.
issues.
Right, so we have to litigate.
One way to do it, though, is to create a destination for the mountain bikers, which I think you're creating by that immediate hard right outside of the parking lot. You're taking them to the trails that exist on the other side of Veterans. And so they have no interest to keep going up the other trails.
Okay.
There's nothing for them to see or do.
Well, is this carriage drive, Council President, a couple more, sorry. This carriage drive, are those for vehicles? Am I?
No, it is a trail. The only
okay.
vehicle that will travel on that carriage road is if there is an emergency in that site and we need, you know, somebody to access something closer in, or if there is, you know, I suggest the city's probably gonna have a UTV that's gonna maintain that, you know,
Right.
bathroom on a regular basis that parks at the house, and they'll be able to go down that drive once a day, open up those restrooms, you know, come back and turn around, and that's why we provided kind of that, and it allows a termination of that road on site as well. So, you know, they would access it, go back to the house, and other than that, it's a trail.
Okay, and I just concerned, it connects to where the motorists can come and drop their kayaks off. And it seems a little bit, I don't want that confusion to where people think they can ride this. You know, some of the big parks have the ride along where you can ride and just ride, the kids can see the animals or whatever, or the birds, and, I didn't know if that was a thought, and I didn't want that to be confused in that nature, especially with it crossing some of these trails, other trails.
Yeah, and
So- so
we'll
be clear
probably
on that.
have to restrict access with some bollards and things like
Very
that,
good.
so we're gonna look into all that.
Very good. All right, very good. Otherwise, I love it, man. I'm excited about this.
Awesome,
Yeah,
thanks, Corey.
excited.
Yeah, I got a few questions and comments. First, Chris and team, great job
Yeah.
on this. Really do like the project. First thing I've got is more of a comment for the council and city staff, but I know this grant addresses the northern portion, but I think we've got to have some idea of what we want on the southern portion before we start making decisions on this, because you don't necessarily want to duplicate things that could be redundant, and we do want to know, we want to have some kind of vision on what we want down there, and I know everybody's probably got ideas for that. Next, I mean, I love all the trails through here. I just want to make sure in keeping this project, low impact, that we're not putting too many trails in. I mean, this seems like it gets you around the whole vicinity pretty well. And then the other point, on the longleaf habitat in the middle, that's probably got to be burned every year or every couple of years. Just want to make sure we've got an access point to get in there. Those are my main comments right now. And then, of course, I know money's important, but we also got one shot, I feel like, to do this. I mean, granted, we own it, we can keep addressing it, but we want to make sure we have the plan right on the front end, and even if we had to do it in bits and pieces, I think working off of the same master plan would be good.
To the low impact.
I've only got one question. The bike trail starting up at Veterans Drive and ending down there close to the parking lot. What's the drop? You said it was 100 feet in the top area to the creek area?
Yeah, for just the bike trail is actually relatively flat. Those contours,
I was trying to see the contours. I'm having a little trouble with this.
yeah, sorry.
Too often.
So we're running parallel with the contours at this location, so that bike trail is gonna be flat going through there.
So the erosion issues aren't going to be negligible in that
Correct,
area?
yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the walking, but with the bike traffic.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we're moving with along the contours
Right.
to prevent that from happening.
Mayor, do you have any comments
Yeah.
on this at this point? Yeah, I think a lot of mine have already been asked.
No, she ain't got anything to say. Don't worry about it.
I think she was about to
Oh, were you about to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you shook your head no. No, please, absolutely.
Psych.
I'm sorry, please, go ahead. No, I'm good. I can't, I would never. Go ahead, please.
No, the only thing that I was going to mention is if we are going to have students, we might want to make sure there is some accommodation for bus parking or a turnaround. Make sure that will accommodate that. And the other thing, Councilman Burrell's point, he's correct, that there are all kinds of landscape companies and people that park on those sidewalks. We might want to, at least at the trailhead area or along the whole thing, work with the county and maybe put some bollards along there so cars can't pull in on that sidewalk.
If it's possible, we have the tunnel there, and I always envisioned some parking up near there. Originally, that was the plan, was to put the parking up on the southern portion, on the actual triangle, and then enter, this was before we had the home, and enter from that, and that was gonna be kind of the entrance to the park. So if it's possible, maybe put, bicyclists could embark from there rather than lower on the hill, or maybe easier to put some access there. I don't see the tunnel being used right now. It just kind of goes to, future
To nowhere,
expansion.
right.
When I thought that originally, before I saw this plan, and I like this plan, I had envisioned amphitheater, outdoor classrooms on the
Right.
triangle portion with a little bit more remoteness in the northern portion. That's just kind of how it was thought of, say, a few years ago. Not to say what you did
Sure.
wasn't great, it just that was the way of thinking back then.
Yep. And we've, Jack, to address some of that, we've walked both sites as well. And the forest and the habitat on this site is extremely unique. And it feels a lot more open. There's some pretty large gully terrain on the other side from old watersheds that used to run through there. So from an active versus passive recreation standpoint, I think the most value from a passive standpoint is on this northern portion.
Yeah, I think that goes back, Jay, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I mean, y'all, we're talking about the things I wanted to bring up, so I think that's, you know, and transitioning into what that other piece is gonna look like.
Right.
You know, kind of having this vision, but then also a next step to how to transition and translate that into something functional on the other end. And just hearing you talk about that, I mean, my obviously thought is that an obvious spot to put more biking trails and everything else, since that's where this initial bike trail leaves? And I don't know, sounds like maybe the topography over there might be a little difficult for that.
There's already one built over there.
There's already.
Yeah, it's already
there's
one, yeah, there's one by the kids, but
Christopher, can you also maybe talk about the tree species and stuff, the unique things that you found on this parcel?
Yeah, and maybe.
I want to go back to the other.
I want to show y'all some precedent images after Ben as well, just to kind of give you a feel for the site.
So I'm Ben Calmus, I'm an arborist and a forester, and Laura and I both walked the site several times, and it was really neat to walk in early spring when things were coming out in bloom. I saw different species that I don't usually see in other sites. I saw Chickasaw plum. I think I sent an email with 12 different species that were just unique. So this site is unique in the fact that there's a lot of different species that having a walking trail and having an arboretum set up that we could showcase what this property has, it's going to be really interesting to show people what's out there.
Yeah, which I think that's part of the benefit and the experience of this, and I think, I don't know if anybody expressed it as a concern, but is overuse of this
That's
going
right,
to
that's right.
compromise any
That's
of
what I was
those
about to say.
species?
Yeah.
Right. I think if people stay on the trail, I don't see an issue with it. Again, we can't control what people do outside the signage, but I don't see an issue with any degradation in the timber or the other species with just a few walking trails here and there.
Okay.
I'm extremely concerned
Yeah.
about that trail right along the creek, so, you know,
Yeah.
when we get through this, I want something to comfort me about how that creek is gonna be protected, because if you encroach on that bank of that creek, and everybody walks right on the edge, it's eventually going to keep eroding into the creek, and then it's
Yeah.
gonna move back
Right.
a foot. It's gonna move
Erosion-
back another foot.
Erosion's definitely is a concern, and maybe it'd be having some boardwalk down there would be something to think about.
Yeah, if I may come for Jack, you know, Jimmy said it as well, and I think all of us are pretty much hitting on the same chord here. You know, we really have to be careful with too much or like too busy, especially when we have really, I think we don't want to put the cart before the horse, and Jimmy kind of mentioned on it with the south, with the triangle part. You know, what are we doing with that, and can we kind of spread this out a little bit to where we have more of a more natural, not too busy here? What's our vision on the other part? Can we use the other part for more functionality, more educational things, and keep this as a beautification, natural, you know, scenery with some trails at the other side as well? But kind of, what's that thought process there? And I think Jimmy hit on it a little bit, but we didn't really get any
Yeah, and
feedback.
to address Jack too,
Yeah.
the scale is deceiving of this site. So when you see something on the edge of the creek, it's really
Might be
not
10,
the edge of
20
the
feet.
creek. And there's actually an existing trail that's there that's flagged, which is what we walked. So the buffer really from creek edge, let's see if it's gonna zoom. You know, it's probably 40, 50 feet
Oh, really?
in some areas. And that's why you can see, you know, we've got trails leading to the creek from that location. You know, this is even, and it's kind of deceiving, this, what looks like a watershed here. This is actually different habitat, riparian. So this is not the edge of creek. Your edge of creek is actually here, Jack. See this parcel line here, and then it then hits on the property line. So, there's a lot of undulation through that creek, but I'd love to get you out on site and really show you kind of that distance between what you think we're impacting versus what we really are.
I'd like that.
That'd be great.
I'd like to see that, and
All
I
of
do,
us need
I guess I have concerns over anything that goes to the creek. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's very, very environmentally sensitive right there.
Absolutely.
It's pretty shallow right there. I already have concerns about putting canoes and kayaks, and I don't know how far up the creek they can go. But we have to be really careful to keep it pretty wild in there. I think
Yeah.
That's what makes it so
Sure.
special. We
Yeah.
don't want
I
to
agree.
destroy what makes it special.
No, and that's certainly not our goals.
So that kayak launch is the only part that you can actually get to the water. That's the only water access of all these perches and outdoor classrooms and overlooks that you see. You're a minimum of 4 to 5 feet above that water's edge at all these locations.
Right.
And the trail is not, and we're talking about low impact, the trail is a single track. Essentially, you're clearing a trail through the woods. You're not paving it, you're not benching it out, it's following the natural contours, and in a lot of places, it's following maybe game trails that are already out there
One
that are
thing-
I lost a
semi-cleared.
couple of cameras out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ground cover too, so having one single trail through the woods is not gonna impact, because there's so much undergrowth out there that's gonna keep erosion down.
Any camphor trees out there?
What about popcorn?
I was wondering when that was going to make an appearance.
About a million of them. They gotta go. Are we gonna kill all those trees?
I hope.
Yeah,
I do too.
Yes, ma'am.
we might want to relook at that parking too.
Yeah, so, and maybe Nicole
It is.
might be best to speak to that, the Fly Creek Watershed Project. Nick, you may- Yeah, so Thompson's also working on the Eastern Shore Watershed Management Plan, and we're working closely with the city and others for a long-term solution for those emergency repairs that were made. And so, Jack, with that is going to come hopefully some restoration of Fly Creek to really make it feel like a stream again, and some areas expand and undulate that floodplain so that, the cut and fill will balance and really have a special moment.
And I know that Thompson put together that Fly Creek watershed plan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, originally. I just wanted to kind of showcase a couple precedent images just to kind of give you a feel of what, these things may look like. As y'all saw, the Carriage Road Trail, but really, we're talking a 4-foot, trail like you go hiking in the woods. And really, there are moments in there that this is the density and the vegetative areas, and it really feels like you're not in the city anymore. I mean, there are some really nice areas to kind of get in the landscape, if you will. Similar here, you get a little bit of sunlight through the trees in certain areas. We certainly want to be considerate of all of our inclusivity and provide ADA trail access. And then these are kind of those moments of, just a small, low-structure bridge crossing, maybe a dry swale.
And so to go back to the ADA trail, it's not like we're coming through there and paving asphalt trails through the woods. They'll be designed in a way that they'll be accessible, but still have low impact for a trail through this park.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. This is not what we want. We don't want this giant trailhead that's paved and, accessing a restroom. We really want to keep it low impact. But I wanted to show kind of the materiality of, this Corten steel and board form concrete that's going to hold up for long-term maintenance issues, burning. But also there could be some sculptural elements, that really create this trailhead as well. And these are just some examples of that. You got something, Corey?
Yeah, so Chris, when we're putting the structures in, how destructive is it with the vehicles that will be traversing, coming in and out for the construction, for the utilities when we put these things down. You know, we tear Humpty, can we put Humpty back together natural as it was? Or what does that look like for the public, you know,
You
just
wanna
to
provide an
kinda-
example of ecotourism, kind of what we're
Yeah,
doing?
so you'll want to utilize that carriage road as more of a spine access road during construction
Okay.
and not go too far off of that trail for the major structures, the pavilion, the restrooms, any of the bigger structures that can't be hauled in on a UTV or anything like that. So when it's all said and done, you're going to have very limited disturbance of the area around where it's being constructed.
Okay,
You just won't need heavy equipment for a lot of these structures.
okay. I just think that's something that needs to be talked about as far
Sure,
as keeping the,
absolutely.
yeah, representation.
These are some kind of those features, I guess, if we go through, and they're low impact. You know, they may be as simple as just some seating areas arranged in the woods. Really trying to, you know, stay raised if there's a watershed area, but have that overlook that's not, you know, really obtrusive to the landscape. It could be as simple as some stumps in the woods, you know, that just become a gathering area. Also, just some examples of a kayak canoe launch. I think, Anthony, you kind of ran through some of
Yeah,
these.
it's just back to the examples of how the form can help create a landmark in the woods or a view shed through or from these structures. And we want it to kind of blend in. We don't want to be able to see these things from a distance through the woods, but as you're maybe rounding a corner, you catch a glimpse, it guides you in, or when you're in it, you can see, you know, a framed view of the trail or a portion of the park. Is really all that this is speaking to.
You know, looking at landscape, kind of this low, medium, high scale, you know, we're looking at the understory and the overstory and really trying to preserve habitat. And, you know, we've seen these animals, we've seen a lot other on site, and we just know that we have to be sensitive to their environment as well. Looking at, you know, those outdoor education opportunities, really trying to promote STEM and STEAM in the area and just add it to all of the other great assets that we have here at the city.
And one thing to consider is that the pavilion is in the grant, but we don't necessarily have to build one pavilion to take care of all those education moments. It can be divided up and split up and really put these nodes throughout the park. It doesn't have to be one location.
These are kind of typical bicycle repair stations. Looking at unique ways that we could do bike parking that's a little more, less obtrusive. And then, you know, providing drinking water for trails. More examples of kind of what that parking in the woods looks like, something that, you know, doesn't feel like a giant parking lot. These are some examples of bird blinds.
The bird blinds, I think, can go back to the sculptural element, the artistic expression that Christopher was speaking to earlier. This could be one of those elements, and it could function as a bird blind as well.
And then we know trail signage is going to be extremely important. And I forgot to mention, just so you get an idea of the scale, the trails that we have shown on the site in the conceptual master plan is 2.5 miles worth of linear footage. So if you were to take kind of the outside loop and end up back at the house, that's 1.5 miles worth of a loop to get back to the house. But trail signage is going to be an important part of that, and not only directional and wayfinding, but we want to look at educational and interpretive signage as well. And I thought this was, you know, kind of in our world of new technologies. You know, we could have a botanical or, you know, an informational scan that tells you where you are or what tree you're looking at. And
the maintenance of a 3x3 square is a lot better than a large colored display out in the woods.
And then something that just kind of excites me that I think, there could be some moments along this landscape where you have these sculptural elements and, living in Fairhope and seeing so many artists here locally, the city could potentially put out an RFP, look, kind of a call for artists, for sculpture elements, flora and fauna of the region or of the area, and really have these kind of, depending on the scale of what, this could be just very simple in terms of an art application or much larger in scale. But just wanted to open that up as well as to be another one of those areas or moments in the woods that you could, a destination. That's all for our presentation. I'm certainly love to continue to talk to y'all if y'all have any more questions, and our design team is here and many of our steering committee members as well.
I've got a couple questions on the grant itself. I can't remember, is the $1 million Go Mesa grant inclusive of the ADA, or is that a separate grant for a couple $100,000? Okay. And then the other, and this may not be necessarily important, but 72 acres on the northern front. I've always thought it was 36 on the lower for 108 total, but I heard 120
Yeah, I may be
earlier,
off.
so.
I know what the northern
108,
parcel
okay.
is for
Okay.
sure.
So 72, 36, got it.
Okay. Oh, yeah, in the house.
Oh, in the house. How many acres on the house? Okay, but a few, gotcha.
So Chris, the tunnel is a part of this project,
Correct.
and the tunnel will start on the other side of Veterans.
Yeah, so there
I
is.
keep worrying about that, 'cause
There's really only one location that the tunnel can go that works with the elevations of the road and what's alongside it. So we work very closely with Richard and George and others with the city to go out here and really understand where this needs to take place. We're dealing with watershed issues and trying to make sure that this is a tunnel we put in that doesn't fill up with water and it, just becomes a drainage corridor. So we've identified this location. We actually think it's a great location, and we think we've solved how to make it work for everybody.
That's a start.
All right, guys, well, thank y'all.
Very
for
good.
your
Thank you
time.
very
much.
Y'all don't have
Good
any
job.
additional questions at this point? We
We'll have-
appreciate it. Look, I think it's a great
Start.
and obviously, ironing out a couple of these. And again, some of it might be, our perception of what this is gonna look like on site without, having to get out there and really see what it looks like and what it is in real life. But I do think this is a great start, and it looks great, and I'm excited about it.
Thank y'all very much for the
Appreciate it.
opportunity.
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on. Next on the agenda are committee updates. Councilman Burrell?
They haven't come up yet this month, but they're starting tomorrow.
All right, Councilman Martin?
I don't have any, thank you.
Jimmy?
I did not have any committee updates.
Kevin?
Nothing to report.
Well, let me be the one to
all
mess
in
up the party here. So we had a special called a historic preservation meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the whole purpose of it was to sort of discuss what the next steps are moving forward or trying to move forward with a historic preservation ordinance. And so, we kind of talked about it for a while, and ultimately their question is, can we enact an ordinance to establish the commission without having already determined what the powers of that commission will be? And here's kind of how we got there is, ultimately, we know that you need to have a Historic Preservation Commission before you can have, or qualify to be what are we trying to,
Historic Preservation Committee?
no, the certified,
CGL.
certified Yeah. So we got to start there, okay? But what's going to take, I think, time is deciding exactly what, and I say time, because there's several things, obviously. You got to, once you come up with a commission and you get the certified CGL, then you have to identify the districts, and then you have to vote on those, have those districts vote, and so there's a lot that goes into it, but obviously step one is the commission. I mean, that's what we got to do first. And so what we'd like to do, or what the commission would like to do, is bring forth an ordinance to the council, or a draft at least, to get that going. The question is, can you do that without spelling out what the powers of that commission are? And so I've discussed this with Marcus, and I think because of the language of that ordinance, I think when you create the commission, they by nature have some power already. I mean, the creation of the commission grants them some power. Now, what power is that? I don't know. There are some things that are spelled out in the statute, but does that mean that that's what they get just by creation? I don't know that. And so I think we got to figure that out. Obviously, they have the regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission or committee meeting is tomorrow at 9:30, or sorry, Wednesday at 9:30.
Historic commission meeting?
It's April 12th at 9:30.
Where?
At the library.
At the museum.
Or museum, excuse me.
Yeah, upstairs in the museum. So kind of the short answer to their question, which is, can you just create the commission, I think is yes. Do you have to do it without, or can you do it without spelling out all of the specifics of what we want them to be able to do and not do? I think maybe yes, but does that mean they don't have any powers just by the creation of the commission? I think the answer is no. I think they do. I don't know what those are at this point. And but the other thing is, without districts, without any of those things, there's nothing for them to police yet.
So there's a push, correct?
Yeah, and I think other things of what it might allow them to do maybe is this 501c3 they've talked about. But again, we have to, just by creating the commission, we have to appoint members to that. I mean, creating it by ordinance doesn't fill it. Now, obviously, we have to look at that too. But that's sort of what the purpose of that special meeting was, and the ultimate question that they wanted to know, because they're very interested in getting that done, because they know, just like we know now, that that is the first step in sort of getting us to where they want us to be from a historic preservation standpoint, and I think getting us to where we wanted to be as far as why this was brought up, to qualify for some of the things that we were trying to get to, from, being able to offer certain properties tax, us not offering it, but them qualifying for certain incentives to preserve certain structures that right now they don't have the opportunity for because we're not a CGL. Anyway, all right, well, that's.
Council President, to that end, I met with a couple of current members of the Historical Preservation Committee on last week, and just one of the very small issues that we touched on was just the number of members that are on that commission. So even in the near term, we could possibly look at that. Mr. Gover, I see you out there. Were you mentioning maybe even enlarging the membership of that commission to a?
They give us kind of a baseline of 7 for the commission, and I think that's.
You think that's adequate? Okay. But we just want to, anyway, it's
want
something
too
to
many,
consider. You don't want to get too
You don't want too
massive,
massive,
but
but
at
you
the
don't want
same
too
time,
small
if you
either.
get too small and
Yeah.
you don't have a quorum,
Right, that's
sometimes
right.
that's an issue, Sometimes that's 7 and 9,
Okay.
member committee,
But
just something to consider.
But the statute says at least 7, is that right? Okay. Okay. All right, well, I'll report back after this next meeting, and then we'll keep going from there.
Good. Good news. Good stuff, Jake. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Guys, moving on, next we have department head updates. So if you have something on tonight's agenda, or if you don't, come forward, let's talk about it. Tim?
Our audit was released last week. It's on our website. I put in y'all's box is what's called the transmittal letter is part of the audit that's over 100 pages, but it's a highlight of how the city did in 22. So if y'all have free time to read it, I did put it in your box. It's just a few pages, but it is the highlights. And if you have questions, to let me know. I do have an item in here that's probably labeled as IT also, but it's a software that actually y'all approved in 2019 and it was never implemented, and it's called General Billing. General Billing would be used by multiple departments. So, and it's just a Munis software that adds on to our current software. But right now we have different departments that are keeping up with some accounts receivables manually. And it's just called General Billing. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, just not right.
No, I don't. The budget that
Yeah.
Speaking to the microphone, when I budgeted, I was a little under budget, or actually the project's over budget. What I'll do is I have a project in my budget that I will not implement this year for log management. I'm going to actually bid that out for next year, and that was an $8,000 project. So I'll use the money from that project to fill the gap of the budget mismanagement for general billing. I think that covers it though, as far as the purpose of it.
Yeah, Council President, if I may. Jeff, there was I think, I saw it was like close to 8.5 or something, that number you called, somewhere in the eights. But there was also I just couldn't understand the details of the 2,000 or 2,300. Is that annually? Is that, so it goes from 8 and then there's a 2,000 service or whatever?
Yes.
Or 2,300. I'm not looking at it just from memory when I read it earlier. So if you can help me, but it was something that, it was something that caught my eye, and but there was no real information on what that number was.
It looks like that's the annual fee, so yeah.
Annual.
It's annual fee.
Okay.
The
Okay,
2,300.
So that's,
It did include that first year's recurring fee.
Mm-hmm.
but then you go back to the 23 annual.
So that basically gives us access to support. If next year we have an issue with some kind of general billing project, we'll be able to pick up the phone and call support to get support on the product.
Gotcha. Very good.
And I don't know if y'all have met our grants coordinator that we've hired, Nicole Love.
Yeah. I saw that in the writing. I didn't know if that was a typo or.
So,
Well, no. You have all these hats, Nicole. Yeah, I saw that.
so Nicole started last Monday,
Very good.
and
Congratulations.
so just wanted to introduce y'all. If I take everybody knows her, but anyway, she works for the city of Fairhope now.
Perfect.
I have a question. What was the, Jeff, what was the item you said you're going to take the 644 from in the budget?
Right, so I budgeted, let's see.
It's not a big deal.
It's not a
The
big
reason-
gap.
You're going to need that other budget item because essentially what I do caution everybody's doing is just saying, well, I have this other money budgeted, I'm just going to take from that. Well, that messes up that budget. If it's you know what I'm saying, if it's in our budget, it's a fluid document and we can change that budget. So if that puts you, are you going to not buy that this year? Because, see, that's just saying I'm going to rob from Peter to pay Paul and.
Okay, well, here, No, I understand.
Details on these items.
Okay, here-
And really, this is probably a poor example because it's such a small amount, but we don't want you saying,
that's
I'm gonna pull $20,000 from this other item, and we're just not gonna get it without editing the budget.
Right, so here, I'm sorry, I found it was 5,500 that I budgeted. The total price was 8644. So the project that I was going to postpone for this year is log management, a place to collect all logs in one place. That I just don't have enough time this year to do that project. We are starting the process of moving our Munis system from on-premise
Okay, so
to
just give me, I'm trying to cut to the chase. What's
Yeah.
that called again? The what?
log management. Like network logs, computer logs. I wanted a program to collect all these logs in one place. I just don't have time to implement
So
that
it's actually
project this year.
$3,144 over budget.
Uh-huh.
Not what was shown on the green sheet.
So what's on the green sheet is under general government, which is where finance, I actually added money in the budget for additional software.
So
So
what-
that's the number you're seeing because you can't split a software, anything that's that dollar amount. You know, city's been used to like splitting, half goes in this department, half goes in another department, but you can't do it if you have anything over $5,000. We've got to find the home. Well, the home is finance, and so in the budget, there was $8,000
Right.
for
So-
software.
So what I would ask, Council President, is when that motion's made, is that we take the additional monies from the log management budget and
Transfer.
eliminate that budget item? You don't need it, you can put it back in next year's budget? Otherwise, you're gonna have another balance in that log management item that we don't want money taken and just wherever, it goes without documenting what we're doing. That make sense to you?
Does.
This is something we've talked about for years in that county.
Okay.
Any questions?
Since I'm up here, I'll go ahead and go over the rest of my agenda
Please.
items. So that was agenda item 17. The first one that I have is number 15. We are upgrading the sound system at the Nick Center. The resolution states 44,980. I'm not
We
sure.
got a correction for that. It's 34,000.
Y'all got the correction? Okay.
We did get a correction?
Yeah, it's a new resolution in front of you. It's, the correct number to that should be 34,510. Is that
That's
right, Jeff?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, because I was wondering, yeah. Mhm.
So this resolution would be to approve that project and the signing of the statement of work for Howard Technology. So basically, the Nick Center, the sound system, I mean, so it's way out of date. They have a lot of trouble with it, and since they use that venue for weddings and meetings and receptions, it just needs a better sound system, a way to do presentations, PowerPoints, and microphones. So this is all just updating that equipment.
All right. Any questions for Jeff, guys, on that? It's like it's almost 4,500 under budget.
Almost 10, right?
The
So 34 versus 45?
No.
No,
the budget-
39.
The budget is
Oh,
39.
oh.
39.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item, it's really for the police department, but since I'm up here, I'll speak to it. It's just an annual renewal for the software that the police department uses from Southern Software, just annual renewal fees.
Okay.
And on the memo, it's broken out there for the different software pieces, the mapping, records management, CAD. It's all, it's all broken out on that memo there for $21,921. Something that comes up every year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, looks like that's $79 under budget. Not as strong as item 15, but
Come
we'll
on,
take it.
Jeff.
All right.
I
Thank you,
think
sir.
that's it for me. Like 17 was the general building, so yeah, that's all I have on the agenda this week.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I will kind of, before I talk about agenda items, kind of give a plug for the design team on the Triangle property and a couple of ideas to consider. One, I highly encourage you to go walk with these folks in the woods. All those little breadcrumb trails that you saw, Christopher, they drug me on every one of them. The biggest thing is the sense of scale. It is 70-plus acres of wooded terrain that has a lot of topography. So even though you see a map that shows trails, when they're this far apart on paper, that's really not perspective of when you're out there and you think you're approaching the old logging road and you keep walking up the hill and you keep walking up the hill and eventually you get there. So the space is significant, and really think about, where does anybody have 73 acres of wooded terrain available for a nature park? It's a pretty big tract of land, so keep that in mind. The other thing that I think led to some of the recommendations that they made is when you come in either on Scenic 98 or Veterans Drive, that is a pretty significant streetscape that's looked that way forever. And when we got to looking at a curb cut and introducing a trailhead or parking off of any one of those areas, that was pretty obtrusive to that iconic greenway that you come into the city. In the plan that you saw, the two curb cuts already exist today. They're already there. So all of a sudden, we weren't introducing new elements on the streetscape that weren't there. So, and with the pedestrian access tunnel, when you go down those roads after this park is developed, you will never see a difference in that streetscape. That was kind of part of the design consideration, which I credit them for kind of picking that up. And the being able to inherit the Dias house made these things possible. Whereas when we were looking at doing direct construction off of Veterans Drive, it was a little bit unpalatable because you'd be changing that iconic greenway that everybody drives down, and it is welcome to Fairhope. We're the green city through the woods, and that type of thing. The other thing I will assure you of, one of the reasons some of that was chosen is because of the Dias house, there's already electricity there, there's water there, and there's easily sewer connected there. So the utility infrastructure requirements, and then the bathroom, the beauty is that we would be able to direct bore from Veterans the water, the sewer, and the electrical. So you're not even cutting through the woods to put in into that. And there's been some discussion, and where you could go with a completely LID remote bathroom with composting toilets and things of that nature. And if you've been in a park that's had them, they're not the most enjoyable experience in the world, but you can go to the extreme on low impact development there. So those are things these guys will still have to suss out. But I do want to kind of give you some of the thought process that led there, is that the streetscape is so iconic that trying to have this where you don't see a change, I think was a very noble effort in their design considerations. I can speak on item 12 and 13. 12 is your Public Works Director tried real hard to save us money on pickleball court, and part of the design was we're going to keep the existing fence posts, make the contractor repaint them and everything else. And to say that the original constructors of that tennis court built things on the cheap is the greatest understatement ever made. Basically, when we pulled up the asphalt, the poles started falling over. So we're basically building a brand new everything out there, and have a change order requesting to replace those fence posts and rails because what's there is not salvageable. I would appreciate your consideration there. Then item 13, as you know, y'all funded a electrical utility shed for the electric department for their equipment back behind the utility compound near their substation off of Young Street. And we did go out and see what we could get it, the slab actually put in place by a third-party contractor. The number came back way too much, so we're going to do it in-house, and we're asking you to reject that bid.
Council President, Richard, what type of fence are we putting up? Is it with chain link?
Yes, it is 10 foot tall, vinyl coated chain link, and it is, I think, black. I think that's what we've gone to. And this fence does include a built-in blind separation between the pool, which we didn't buy, and the pickleball court, which is ours. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
President, if I may, real quick, Richard, while you're up here, I just wanted to ask, I meant to ask you earlier, but can I get a show of hands, just for our benefit of everyone that was involved in the design team for the Triangle Park? Just, okay. And then I know we had the two gentlemen that left earlier too, so, okay.
Yes,
Well,
and
thank
and if
y'all.
you go for a walk, get Fulham's Forestry to go with you, because you'll learn things about trees you never knew you didn't need to know. Okay, all right, thank you.
Appreciate all of y'all,
Thank you,
by the
Richard.
way.
Who's next? Pat?
All right, I did have a couple of items on number 7, which is a resolution, it's an MOU with the USA. It's just an annual renewal that we do every year. Basically says that if anything happens on any of their campuses, that we will notify them and we'll work together on those cases. And we've also got an application for alcoholic beverage license, number 19. Everything checks out on that, unless you have any questions. And then we also, number 18, an appointment to the Parking Authority, Mr. Brian Flowers.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Welcome.
Good evening. I've got agenda item 11, which is the execution of the contract with Volkert for the county project on 64 that goes from 181 east to 54. They're putting that center turn lane down 64, and that will impact our gas line running along the north side of 64. So that's agenda item that I have, and if you got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them for you.
It's gonna cost $100,000 to,
It's refundable.
it's refundable.
100%.
Yeah, it's funded by somebody
It
else.
is, it is a reimbursable project.
Okay,
yes, sir.
let's say it is. Is that what it costs to design to relocate a gas line? I mean, how far is this, I mean, what all is that involved?
Two parts, 40, the original, or the, let's see. There's split 60/40. There's a design phase, and then there's a construction inspection phase throughout the project. But, yeah, it's a significant project for us associated with this county project, so, yeah.
So it runs, I mean, miles, not just going under the road, is it?
Oh, no, it runs parallel with the project,
Runs
the
parallel,
entire length, well,
okay.
Yeah.
we service the reserve subdivision just to the west of the creek. So it impacts us from 181
There you go.
almost all the way to the creek, which is just short of 54. So
That's what you said.
it runs the entire length of the project.
181 and 54.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to make.
Significant
Even though
im-
we're not paying for it, the governments need to look out for each other.
I under-
because
yeah, absolutely.
We're all getting gouged. or something.
We are.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, welcome, Wesley. I know, Jeremy, if you're watching, we miss you, bud. Yeah, I just want to put that out there.
You don't miss him as much as I do.
Yeah.
Yep, I sent him a text this morning. I said, you'll do great, and I miss you already.
Yeah,
So,
all right.
Thank you, Wes.
thank you, appreciate it.
Wes.
Hey, good afternoon. So for the past couple of months, we've been working with Baldwin County Utilities for an internship program with the gas department. Over the past couple of weeks, me and Wes have gotten to know each other a little bit better. For this internship program, we've received 61 applicants, and we will be doing interviews Friday at Coastal, along with all the other utilities in Baldwin County. So we're looking forward to that.
That's great.
That's encouraging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We just have number 9 tonight. It's Geocon testing and for the treatment plant 3 for testing concrete and soil compaction with a not to exceed of $15,000.
Okay. Any questions on item number 9, guys, at this point?
Have anything?
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it.
That's it.
Don't fight each other.
Okay, I just have item. Okay, here we go. Item number 10, and that is to execute the contract for the turnkey fireworks show for 4th of July. So, and then Jeff already spoke on item number 15 for the Nick Center, but I'm happy to answer any questions on that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Paige. And that number is what we budgeted?
40, yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a public hearing as item number 5 and an associated annexation with that. John, can I flip just to show my image? It's a really simple case, I think, that warrants looking at one thing before the presentation. This image on the screen, so the zoning case is going to be an annex or a rezoning case of 5.19 acres. It's a down zoning from R2 to R1, bigger lots. The person purchasing the lot wanted to obtain an extra acre that's shown in the kind of cream color on the screen. That just so happened to be the city limits lines. The other property did not have interest in annexing in, so we're doing a little bit of a juggling here. The easiest way to accommodate this was downzoning to R1, a straight annexation, which is agenda item 6 of the 1 acre. If both are approved, we will do an administrative replat to combine the two into one lot. There is not access here from public roads. There's no intentions of splitting this up into further lots or anything like that. And one of the questions that did come up at the Planning Commission is what would happen if somebody wanted to do that. That would have its own process, public hearings and everything else. But at this time, somebody just wants about 6 acres instead of the 5.
Okay, so when it says it's for a replat, they're not going to divide?
No.
Okay.
The blue and orange will be 2 unique pieces of property for almost a split second. We will merge those together into one lot.
The blue and orange together equals the 6.37, is that correct?
The label on this replat, I believe, was incorrect.
Yeah,
The
one said 5.19.
5.19 is what's in blue, and then the orange, it's in the staff report, correct? This was just an exhibit we received from the engineer and one we grabbed. So I believe it ultimately is 6.19 acres. More.
Well, my question really wasn't so much on the size, but the orange and blue will be combined. That's the combined
That's
parcel.
correct. Right.
That'll be
Yes.
annexed.
And
So
that-
then parcel 2 would technically be contiguous with the city limits at that point.
That's correct.
Right.
So in addition to this zoning change, we're actually moving our city limits a little further east in this location.
Okay.
Now, you can see everything around it is within the city, so everything in blue is already within the city. So we do have a majority of the areas around. This is one of those islands we'd like to get cleared up.
This is right at Twin Beach to the right. You take a left on 181.
This sits
It's right there.
directly between Firethorn and Stone
Yeah.
Creek.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Hunter.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right, anyone else? Seeing none, I've got, there's two that I don't have a name by. Number one is item number 8, which is a resolution regarding the disposal of personal property owned by the city. Who's going to, Richard?
It's a Cadillac.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that one. And Chief will have to tell us the backstory, but this is your chance to own a 2011 Cadillac CTS with a seized vehicle with a rebuilt title. So
Very nice.
that baby can be yours.
It's salvage title, but yeah.
So apparently the police have a vehicle that they're wanting to get rid of, and it can be yours
I
for
got
the right
teenagers
price.
at the house.
So,
I need to go look on that thing, man.
And Lisa and I had a conversation after y'all's, Mr. Councilman Burrell made a kind of a good point, and I think we maybe changed the language to give y'all a little better comfort, and that is the council shall grant the authority to the mayor to reject any or all bids when, in her opinion, she deems the bids to be less than adequate consideration for the personal property, since they really don't come back to you after they've been declared surplus and put up for sale. So-
Richard, I appreciate that, but we don't like to point it out when Councilman Burrell makes a good point, so can you please refrain from that in the future? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then the next I've got is item number 14, which is our AMEA $20,000 grant. You want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about that?
Well, it's something that we've had an annual appropriation
Right.
from Alabama Municipal Electric Authority. I think it at one point went from 15,000 to 20,000. They give it to all their member cities, and we've been using this to go to our Hatch, our small business incubator, for many years now, and we're just continuing on with that tradition.
Okay.
So, going on, it helps fund the, keeping the doors open at that place. As everyone knows, the big picture is that they will eventually be moving into the K1 Center, and we were able to piggyback, by keeping this alive and keeping it going, we were able to make it even larger by getting the grant to renovate the K1 Center, which they'll ultimately move into.
All right, guys, that's it for the work session. We'll be back at 6 o'clock to start our regular meeting.